Hey, Sovereign Tech listeners. Boy, if you're wondering about the audio here, don't worry. The ugly audio is only at the beginning of this episode. Only this little disclaimer that I'm giving you, just because right now I'm on location. But the rest of the episode was recorded in Brian's dungeon of sex and magic in the BDSM studio. No problem there. So that's golden audio. Don't worry about this. But I just wanted to make a little disclaimer. This is an episode, probably the first episode, Sovereign Tech Prime episode that I can think of, where I felt like, is this all right? Is this okay for me to put out there? This is a heavily, I felt that way about Patreon episodes in the past, but this is the first time a Sovereign Tech Prime episode where I really felt that. This is an episode that is heavily political. When you get to about the 48-minute mark to about the hour and 48-minute mark, there's about a whole hour here where it's very, very political. And I want you to be conscious of that because I know of the thousands and thousands of Sovereign Tech listeners. Some of you are just here for the tech and you just like the little sprinkling of human liberties and anarchism and all that. There's a lot of conversation about libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism and my varying issues with that. So, as well as some philosophical and ethical conversations that are not new to longtime Sovereign Tech listeners. But if you're a new listener, yeah, you might not have heard me talk about some of this stuff before, particularly when it comes to the use of lethal force and things of this nature. So I just want you to be aware that that's happening. Again, an hour and 48 minutes. It's about 48 minutes, and then at the hour and 48-minute mark is where a lot of that political conversation, and I get pretty heated up, and some people love it when I do that, but it's there. I just wanted you to know. Anyway, I'm sure all of you will still enjoy the episode. Most of the people that I mentioned this about in the Sovereign Tech Facebook group and the Sovereign Tech Uncensored Facebook group said, well, if you're not comfortable with it, you have to release it. And so, you know what? I was mulling over and I said, all right, fine, I'm releasing it. So here it is. Woo! Let's get to the show.
Just when you thought it was safe to put on your headphones, you entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Baby, I know that you're looking for that excitement. You're looking for that good time. And you're looking for all that hot news and the analysis on what is causing all this. Well, you've come to the right place. Of course, this is Sovereign Tech, and I am the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star. Brian Sovryn, ready to make it happen. And holy hell, do we have a lot to get into this week. A lot of deep stuff. And actually, I'm going to do a couple things in this episode that are going to end up being a little bit different. Believe it or not, I'm going to actually do some in varying segments. I'm going to be doing some reading from social media accounts. Ooh, that doesn't happen often, does it? Well, they're not all mine, but baby, they're important. We're going to cover it. We're going to get into it. Not that this show ever shies away from controversial, but we've got some controversial shit to cover. Anyway, if you have not yet, I just want to implore you. I dare say one more time, but I'm sure I'm going to do it more in the future. I dare implore you, please sign up for the Sovereign Tech newsletter. If you can't get enough Sovereign Tech, if you want more of the content that we talk about, from the geeky shit to the science to the tech to the music, whatever the hell we talk about, okay, a newsletter, an email newsletter gives you this great format that gives me a great format to cover things that doesn't exactly work in podcast form. And also you get the short fiction from the Sovereign universe that everybody just goes wild over, baby. And if you're not on it, go to zog.email. That's the website, zog.email. Instead of .com, it's .email. zog.email. Sign up for it. Already got a lot of people signed up for it. I'm honored by that. But please do. And it doubles as, again, it's not just about it being a newsletter. It doubles. I'm not going to do anything with your email address. It doubles as a way to communicate with you that is a little more guaranteed, a little more robust, a little more resilient than a lot of the modes that we're probably going to end up talking about, in this episode. So please, the Sovryn Tech newsletter, zog.email, understand it's just as it gets just as hot, just as uncensored, just as wild as the Sovryn Tech show does, but it's an email form. I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I wanted to make the email newsletter that I wanted to read. And so that's what I did. And other people are enjoying it. They're digging it. And hey, rock and roll. So anyway, coming off of last week's episode where we talked about blockchains quite a bit, talked about Bitcoin Cash, or Bcash as I'm enjoying calling it, among other things. I actually had a largely blockchain-esque episode lined up for this week as well, but I'm probably going to push that back until maybe next week. Maybe I can have a guest on to talk about it. Somebody who's really knee deep in the space, far more so than I am, even though I definitely keep a very close eye on these things. So anyway, I thought about doing it this week, but then I was like, let's shake it up. Let's not turn this into, the Bitcoin show or something, because who wants to listen to that like every single week all the time? I guess there are people that do, but it's just not my bag. Anyway. There's so much to talk about. There's so many amazing things going on. It's great to have a niche podcast. Don't misunderstand me. But somehow I cover so many different subjects, and yet this is still technically, I think, a niche podcast, and kind of always will be. But, a niche can get to a few 100,000 listeners. Not that I'm at that level. I'm only cranking 5 digits, but hey, what the hell? Let's do it. So, all right, baby, let's start talking the Foreplay, where we cover all the little stories that maybe don't deserve their own segment. Let's do it. So I want to start this off with a correction, really, not a correction, but an expansion upon a subject that we brought up last week, actually during the Foreplay, which I ended up going on a bit of a tirade about, which is the Signal app. Now, the concern that was brought up, it was sent to me via email, bbs@sovryntech.com, or through the contact form at zog.email. The concern that was brought up was that I have been recommending Signal, but Signal relies upon Google Play services. And since you're telling people to get away from Google, we're going to be talking about that later. Since you're telling people to get away from Google, this is kind of a misnomer. Like, effectively, because Signal relies upon Google Play services, it sort of has a potential exploit, backdoor, however you want to label that. And I talked about this, and I said, I said that, first off, I have mentioned that many times, and I'm well aware of that. I also mentioned that Signal or Open Whisper Systems particularly, had been working on, they announced on Twitter some time ago that they are working on making Signal independent of Google Play services. Okay. Now, there was a time, especially if you read the early Dark Android blogs, where I talked about that, because Signal used to be 2 apps, okay? It used to be Redphone, and it used to be TextSecure. TextSecure was actually completely open source and did not require Google Play services. Redphone, I'm not so sure, was the same situation. But you could install TextSecure from F-Droid, which is an independent app repository that's all open source and doesn't require Google Play services. I'm a big fan. And so originally I would recommend TextSecure, without any reservations, right? So, but then what happened is, at least on iOS, Open Whisper Systems created the Signal app, which is where they combined TextSecure and Redphone into one app. Down the line, they did the same thing for Android, where they canceled TextSecure and Redphone, and they put it all into one app, that being Signal. So it relying upon Google Play services was kind of a new thing for Signal particularly. But about a year and a half later or so, Open Whisper Systems came out and said, yeah, we're going to try and get this off of these dependencies of, Google Play services, which is a concern, again, because if you really want a genuinely, anonymous, secure, private mobile device, and generally with the Dark Android blog. In its most extreme forms, I recommend a tablet or something, or a tablet working in conjunction with a burner phone or whatever. Okay. Generally, you don't want Google's stuff on there at all. So you don't want to install GApps. You don't want to install, the Play Store. You don't want to install any of that. Okay. And so, without that, you really can't use Signal. That has been the case for some time. Also, you have, and this is equally kind of striking, you have the Signal app for desktop, but really it's only for the Chrome browser. Now you can use it through Chromium, but you're still kind of going through the Chrome Web Store or whatever. Similarly, about a few months ago now, anyway, Open Whisper Systems came out and said we need a Java programmer and for our desktop app, which I assumed meant that it was them trying to create an independent Open Whisper, or an independent Signal app that didn't rely upon your web browser as its platform. Okay, and I still think that that's something coming to fruition. I haven't seen that come to reality yet, but whatever. At least that's being worked on, and there are other concerns that people may have with having Signal sync with your desktop, even though the handshake is done with the QR code. Personally, it's kind of done the right way. Regardless of all that, anyway. A great Sovryn Tech listener actually pointed out to me that now there is, and I put the link in the show notes, you can actually get the website distribution build of the Signal Android APK. APK is like the Android version of an XE on Windows. Okay, so this is the install file. The latest one, it's up to Signal version 4.8.1, which matches what's in the Google Play Store. They have various warnings around it on the website. It says danger zone. Advanced users with special needs can download the Signal APK directly. Most users should not do this under normal circumstances. And there's a SHA-256 fingerprint that you can use to verify the file to make sure. But here's the thing. So now, guess what? Yes, you can install Signal completely separately from the Google Play Store. It no longer relies upon that. So problem solved. Problem solved. Signal does not rely upon Google Play services anymore. Everything I said last week is still completely valid and true. Okay. Like the overall point that I made, that these things are hard, that, the trade-off between privacy or the trade-off between security and convenience, all of these things are still completely valid points. I'm not backing up on any, or, backing away from anything that I said last week. It's all still very true. I am glad that this exists, that you can install this completely independently. I imagine the reason some people asked me after the fact about it, like, well, why does it even need the Google Play services dependencies? I imagine part of it was ease of what could be ease of contacts connection, as well as would more have to do with services that like Redphone used to provide, where you're using secure calling and all that. Like, I really think it all comes down to that video and audio calling functionality. As to where the texting, that's as open nature. SMS is such a, encrypted or otherwise, is such an open affair that, and that's true too. Like Signal now also, uses a data connection exclusively. It doesn't actually send over SMS anymore, which TextSecure used to. But regardless, problem solved. You can install Signal completely independent of the Google Play Store. You do not need the Google Play Store. So there we go. Link is in the show notes for that. You just go to the website signal.org, and it is an official Open Whisper Systems site that they just use for, kind of for ease of sharing and naming purposes, to check that out. So there you go. Now, another story. This is not a correction or anything. Well, this is a correction of a story that was shared around quite a bit. In fact, I think even some great people in the Sovryn Tech Uncensored Facebook group shared this. And when I read it, okay, so originally there's a lot of FUD, a lot of BS, a lot of kind of clickbaity scare tactic headlines that were shared about the situation. And this is about an AI that Facebook had shut down because it started making its own language. Like that's kind of how the reporting was going. Now, even when it was in its creepy, scary form, and the reality of the situation was cleared up in just a matter of a couple days, even when it was shared in its kind of creepy form, I didn't mind. I didn't care. Like some of the headlines were, here's some of the headlines. Facebook engineers panic. Pull plug on AI after bots develop their own language. Here's another one. Facebook shuts down AI after it invents its own creepy language. Another one. Did we humans just create Frankenstein? I mean, this is really... oh man. I mean, there was so much about this. And what was happening so Facebook has a department called FAIR, of all ironies, which stands for Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research. Okay. And they were developing an AI, more really machine learning would have been the more particular term to use here. They were developing, I mean, because there's a difference between, when the part of the problem with the term AI is that it is such a blanket big tent term. Okay. Because there's AGI, artificial general intelligence, like a Skynet style thing, right? Maybe without the maliciousness or maybe with it. Then you have, machine learning, which is more of like an algorithmic, AI application, where I mean, yeah, there's a degree of what could be called intelligence involved. But anyway, most of the time when you hear AI being used, nobody's really talking about an AGI. I mean, when it's being used in an actual like corporate document of some kind, usually they're just talking about some degree of machine learning or something. So FAIR was developing an AI that could help, that could interact with customers with a person at the back end, which sounds a lot like really what is it? M, right? That's the name of the virtual assistant that has a human sort of at the back end if needed. That's built into Facebook Messenger and that's available in some areas, right? So it sounds like they were just trying to build something that improves upon that. Now, the thing is, why they shut this down, okay, because it was supposed to be an AI that a customer did not know that they were talking to someone that, I mean, it's not exactly the Turing test, but it sounds kind of similar to it, even though the Turing test is kind of bullshit. When you look into the history of the Turing test, you're going to find out that the way it gets used by the mainstream media and a lot of the tech journalists in general, like they have no fucking understanding of what that's about. Anyway, so the idea was to develop something that could work, consumer facing. So it was an AI designed to interact on both ends with a human being. And what happened is that it started like they accidentally had it start talking to it, kind of to itself, to another AI. And so in the efficiency of learning the language, it started like what they call this, okay, is they call it generative adversarial network, meaning that it's designed to negotiate. Okay, so it ended up being two AIs that were supposed to be facing humans, that were facing themselves, that were trying to come to similar conclusions. Okay, a similar conclusion, and like one of the statements that they were coming up with, like there was a conversation put between the two where they showed some of the words that they were saying, and it's like it was saying Bob was one of the AIs that said I everything else. Alice would respond, balls have zero to me. Then Bob would say you, I, everything else, Alice, and then Alice would say balls have a ball to me. So like it was working what was happening there. Okay, and so, but they shut it down because, again, they weren't meant to be really communicating with each other. They were meant to be, consumer facing. They were meant to be human facing, AIs. So nothing really nefarious seriously, nothing really nefarious going on there. This was just stuff getting pointed kind of in the wrong direction and sort of left on. Now, even if it were like they were testing out something and Facebook's AI was generating its own language and AIs were talking to each other and we couldn't understand what the fuck they were saying, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I really have no problem with this. In fact, we talked about this, might have been during a HackSec, maybe a year, maybe two ago, where during a hacker conference, there were AIs, we'll say, or machine learning set up that was security software. Okay. And these security algorithms were creating completely on their own. They were creating their own encryption schemes that humans weren't really able to crack. I mean, it's a long story. I'd have to drudge up the story, but I think with that, you could do a DuckDuckGo search and end up with something, relevant, or you'd find the story. And at the time when I talked about that story, I said, well, this is fucking great. Like, good. I mean, the encryption that humans don't make, so they probably don't have the first clue how to break. Please, can I have that? Can I have, like, on my little communicator device, whatever that ends up looking like, doesn't necessarily have to be a smartphone. Can I have on my little communicator device, could it have a degree of machine learning to it where it is, where it could send like this hyper, this incredible encryption, the super encryption or superhuman maybe encryption, supra, right? This inhuman encryption that could communicate between each other, and then, no government would have a fucking clue what to do about, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, let's do this. I have no problem with this. There's nothing creepy about this. Who gives a shit? And again, as I've said many times on the show in recent months, look, we're nowhere near AGI. And these AIs, be it at FAIR or wherever, developing their own little languages, in no way equates to an AGI. It no way equates to Skynet. It doesn't even come fucking close. This was just the mainstream media and even some unfortunate tech journalists spreading bullshit and going for clicks. Even if the absolute worst you imagine was true about this, it means nothing. Like, it really means nothing. I mean, and like I said, if it's in the case of, say, for encryption and security and all that, it's actually a great boon. Yeah, let's do this. I would love it if there was some kind of machine learning that was constantly adjusting, like an encryption scheme and communications and the encryption between communications between me and another party. Oh, that'd be fucking awesome. And have it be completely open source how it does it, but you just can't do anything about it. Oh, hell, please. So, when I even, like I said, even in the worst situations of how this could have been described or parlayed or what was going on, I saw it only as exciting. Great. Good. New languages at the end of the day means new encryption. Really. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that statement. Right? Remember, not that I support the war machine in any fucking way whatsoever, but I mean, remember how the Navajo, right, were, their language was used during World War II because so few people spoke it. It wasn't really written in whatever, and it worked so well as effectively, encrypted communications. Cryptographic. I mean, it was kind of a human cryptography. I mean, it was really something. So yeah, apply that to AI or machine learning in, say, some kind of chat app, some kind of really advanced chat app, and awesome, good. Then nobody can understand what the hell's going on because it's constantly shifting. It's not written down. It wasn't created by a human. You have no basis of, starting basis with it. I mean, fuck yes, let's do this. So I was baffled by, I mean, I understand why some people thought it was kind of crazy, and I get it, especially at first blush. But when you just take a second and you step back and you go, oh, actually, this is kind of cool. And either way, it would have been cool. So, but Facebook wouldn't allow it to be used as an encryption because Facebook wants to see everything you do. Okay, but once this capability is unleashed, other companies will just copy it, and it's only a matter of time. As we're learning now with everything software related, it is only a matter of time before an open source alternative comes into existence, and that open source alternative takes over the world. We know that now. Open source has won. Okay, we've been talking about that for, what is this, episode 237 or 238? Ever since episode 200, we've been talking about, look, it's over. The victory has been done. Open source wins, straight up. So anyway, let's get into another story here. This one's kind of a sad story. So just recently, Apple announced, I guess this would have been end of July, like July 27th, Apple finally announced that they will no longer be selling, and they are killing off production of the iPod Nano and the iPod Shuffle. Now, these are two lines of products that started back in 2005. Both of them, the Nano and the Shuffle, came out at the same time. And this is before, again, the iPhone didn't come out till 2007, so this is pre-iPhone. I have gone on record over and over again saying that the iPod, not the iPhone, the iPod was the most revolutionary product since the personal computer. I mean, just straight up, the smartphone is bullshit. No, it really is, folks. The smartphone just transposed what a computer does into your pocket. The iPod really created another category. Okay, that gave you something that changed the entire music industry. It changed everything. Don't even talk to me about streaming. The iPod is what put in people's heads, what changed kind of the popular consciousness to say, wait a minute, in my pocket, I can have access to thousands of songs. The iPod did that. Without the iPod, streaming's not a new idea. I talked about this recently. In fact, I did a write-up on it. You can read it on Medium, where I was talking about the internet age wasn't built on Western values. How Bill von Meester in the 80s, like back in 81, how he came up with streaming music services, and the music companies at the time, Universal, Epic, Sony, whoever, they, and MCA, all of them, they were on board with, oh yeah, the streaming music thing, this sounds great. What actually killed streaming music was, of all shocks, the record the record stores, not the record companies, the record stores. They're the ones that shut down Bill von Meester's idea. Why? Because obviously you lose out on record sales, and you lose out on CD sales and cassette sales and all of that. So they knew that they were threatened. The iPod's what finally shut down what was really holding back the music industry, which, look, record companies are fucking, the RIAA, all that evil as shit. Don't misunderstand me. But let's be clear here. A lot of the record stores, especially the big chains and all that, they are no innocent angels flying around. Okay, and the iPod destroyed them. That's what people fucking miss it. They miss it every time. The smartphone's so revolutionary. No. The MP3 player, and the iPod, of course, being the pinnacle of that. That's what wrecked. That's what wrecked the music industry. That's what changed the game. That's what changed so much of the world and how we interact and everything. Including the entire audiobook industry, which is. Boy, if the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy were here, she could give me the metrics. Like, audiobooks have, I think for some major titles, audiobooks outsell the actual, physical book or ebook themselves. Audiobooks are huge. What's allowed for audiobooks to be such a big deal? What's allowed for podcasts to fucking exist? The iPod, not the fucking smartphone, but it changed everything. It created independent media. It created, the audiobook industry. There's so many things that it did, as to where really, without smartphones, people would just use their laptops. They really would. But the iPod, putting all this stuff in your pocket and allowing you to multitask. Look, you can't shove a laptop in your pocket. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So again, the iPod was this revolutionary thing. And I missed it. When the iPod Classic went away, I thought that was kind of sad. I had was the 7th generation, was that the last one? iPod Classic. I had that forever. I also had an iPod Shuffle, the last model, which was the one that was just a little clip with the, just very few. There's like 4 buttons on it, maybe. Had about like 2 to 4 gig of storage, something along those lines. Most of your controls, you could even do through controlling on the headset. The Shuffle went through a lot of different, designs, where there was the ones that didn't really even have buttons, and everything was in the wire of your headphones, which obviously now Apple's totally changed on that, right? You don't even get a 1/8 jack anymore. But anyway, so the Shuffle, just really, really slick. I love that little device. I had my little hot pink one that I carried with me, and it was great for putting, an audiobook. The only hard part was controlling the speed, changing the playback speed, which was one of the other revolutionary things that the iPod specifically did, where it allowed you to listen to things faster. You didn't have the granular controls of like 2x or 2.5x or something like that, but you could listen to things faster. That was huge. And you couldn't really necessarily do that with the Shuffle, but it was great for, at the gym. You just clip it wherever. It's so lightweight, just a little piece of aluminum, that you never feel it on you. But now that's gone. No more of that. And it's funny too. I was actually, because I got rid of my hot pink one some years ago, kind of when I was buying into this whole notion that, smartphones are great, which, fortunately I've woken out of that haze. But recently I was looking on Apple's site again. I was like, I would really love, for workouts, I'd love to have an iPod Shuffle again. And it would be great because the iPod Shuffle is cheaper than a fucking Bluetooth, a really great pair of Bluetooth or decent pair of Bluetooth headphones. So, which, Bluetooth headphones admittedly are nice for workouts because you don't have that block of sensors sitting in one of your pockets or strapped to your arm or something like that. To where potentially something could happen to it. You just have a cheap little iPod, little Shuffle, and even if something happens to it, $50, right? Like it's not that big a deal. But the Nano and the Shuffle have now both officially ended. Again, they have gone through so many different models. I always thought the Shuffle was such a brilliant little idea, and it was really, I think, one of the first steps, even though I don't like this direction necessarily, but I kind of get it, and for a specific use case, it sort of worked. It was one of the first steps on Silicon Valley's part to get to zero UI, because they were really getting rid of the UI. And I imagine if the iPod continued on as a line, which if Steve Jobs is still around, it probably would. He just loved it too much, and understandably, it was the real revolutionary, product. The iPhone was a big deal because it was just an iPod with a phone, right? I think he would, it would have continued on, and eventually you would have had something like what do they call them, the EarPods or the AirPods, where, you would talk to the iPod Shuffle, and that would be all the controls. So the iPod Nano, that's another interesting one too. There's a lot to say about that because there was that one model that I think they had a few different models. They had the ones where it had the camera on it, which I thought were really nice. Those were like the 5th or 6th generation or something like that. And then the generation after that, or maybe it was the one before, where it looked like the Clip, kind of like the iPod Shuffle, but it had a little touch screen on it. And what ended up happening was people would sell watch bands that you could clip your iPod Nano into. And then people would just release apps for the iPod Nano that would have time on it and everything. And that was a really cool idea. In fact, it was really the precursor, and Apple didn't come up with it, to the Apple Watch. It was something the market wanted. And that's part of my confidence in thinking that the market still wants like a smartwatch. They still want that sort of thing. I mean, maybe people have already gotten past it enough because now they're so used to just looking at their smartphone or something. But I think if a genuinely great watch was really made that could add in what the iPod has evolved into now, which is just an iPod, with some apps and and a phone connected to it, and the ability to text and whatever. If someone could really bake all of that into that all-in-one device, I think you might see that finally come back. But anyway, really, it's kind of the end. I know that the iPod Touch is still a thing, and I love the iPod Touch. I think it's a fine device. But really, kind of the era of the iPod's over in 2017, and it's kind of sad. Because like I said, it just was so revolutionary. It really did change the world. People just don't realize it. Way more than smartphones. I mean, I don't even think smartphones would have necessarily taken off if people weren't already primed with MP3 players to be doing so much with a device in their pocket. Or to be doing things so personal, and music is such a personal experience, like within their pocket. The other thing that's and I've talked about this on Sovryn Tech in years past, that's kind of sad is, there goes one of the last bastions of, I mean, not that it was necessarily a click wheel where it had kind of touch controls, but yeah, there's one less UI that's gone away. But then, like I said, maybe that was the point of the iPod Shuffle was to get to zero UI. So anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Bye-bye, iPod. I love you. Woo! Now, speaking of the iPod, boy, like I said, that brought on the podcast. If you want to hear a great podcast, and if you're like me, you're a huge Star Wars fan, or maybe you just need to be convinced, I want you to check out the Resist the Empire podcast. So much fun, so many cool things talked about. One of the best sources for Star Wars news that you can get, as well as reviews, breakdowns of characters, right down to their politics. There's the smallest galactic political quiz that they do. Oh, it's so much fun. Just tremendous production. I love it. It's my favorite Star Wars podcast. I can say that straight up. ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com. That's the website you want to go to. Okay, you can let them know, hey, I heard about you through the Golden Stallion. Woo. And believe me, they know who you're talking about because they're fans of this show too. So just one of the best. If you love Star Wars and you want maybe kind of that Liberty perspective on Star Wars as well, which that's kind of rare, this is your podcast, baby. Believe me, I listen to it every time a new episode's come out. It's just phenomenal, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show. ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com.
Story of the week.
Woo! It's time for Story of the Week. Do I even get to breathe? No. God damn it. Anyway, let's get into our Story of the Week. And this is, I'm going to have some fun here. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, got a little notification of a tweet from Cookie Monster. Yes, that Cookie Monster. If me is what me eats, is me a cookie? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm telling you, Cookie Monster's tweets, the official account, me Cookie Monster, it's half the reason I'm on Twitter still. No, I like Twitter fine, but I'll like and retweet every single thing that Cookie Monster puts out. If you haven't noticed that, if you're not following me on Twitter and you haven't seen that over, however long, well, now you know. So to get the latest Cookie Monster tweets, make sure you're following me at Sovryn Tech on Twitter. But, anyway, kind of a nice little lead in there. If you want to follow me on another quasi-social network, something interesting, it actually got released in 2016, in November of 2016. And just now, we're in mid-2017. Of course, this is being recorded in August of 2017. It's just now starting to, really skyrocket in prominence and use, and it really is. Calling it a social network is, not unfair. I think that's accurate. And it's called Saraha. And what that means in Arabic is frankness or honesty. Now, what allows for this frankness or honesty is quite simply the fact that this is, for all intents and purposes, anonymous. Okay. And it is made by I guess an Arabic developer. Or at least developer. I don't know if the person is actually from an Arabic country and the company is starting out there. But I mean, this is really, really, really popular. And all you have to do here's what's interesting about Saraha if you haven't heard about it yet. So that's SARAHAH.com. So SARAHAH.com. And if you want to find my URL for it, it's actually Sovryn.Saraha.com. And this, all it is it, when you say you typed in Sovryn.Saraha.com, okay, or if you downloaded the app and you searched for Brian Sovryn on there, you'd find me. All that's going to come up is a little text box that says, share some constructive criticism or something like that, and a smiley face. Of course, people share all kinds of things, not just constructive criticism here. But a little box comes up. You don't have to have an account to use this. That's part of the reason where it's, effectively anonymous. And whoever's page you're on, okay, if you're on mine, you can share a comment with me. I don't know who sent it. I have no fucking clue, unless you give me clues or something. You can't respond to it. You can, heart it into your own favorites, but that's kind of about it. Now, you can have an account and send constructive criticism to other Saraha users, and that will be saved in your sent tab, okay, what you sent. Or you could just open an incognito window, go to the person's, URL, and, and just share something, and then it doesn't get saved anywhere because, again, this is relatively anonymous. Now, I'm actually, and I said I would do this on a Patreon episode recently of Sovryn Tech. I was on the Wednesday Q&A this week, where I said that, I'm going to talk about this app because I think there's interesting things to say about it. And I'm going to actually read some of the Saraha messages that got left for me, because obviously some people felt, oh, this is anonymous. So, and I don't need to actually make an account. So thus it doesn't have to get tied back to me. I mean, we could talk IP addresses and all that, but that's not what the average person is going to be able to find out. And so I could say whatever I want and leave, constructive criticism or harsh criticism or something else, or maybe something very nice. And people have. In fact, a lot of people have. So I'm going to cover these, but there's something before I get into those, because I'm going to treat it like a kind of a mini Q&A here on Sovryn Tech, which, used to be a part of the show until, it became pretty much a Patreon perk. So I'm going to read them, but I want to talk about Sarah, initially here. The interesting thing for me about it, and this is going to be a theme that we're going to get into later on in the show, because we're going to talk about privacy's history in our tech history segment. And then I have a review of the movie The Circle. It is interesting that if, a lot of claims that go around is that, and believe me, I've had it with libertarians, ANCAPs, Marxists, whoever, socialists. I've had it with the entire ideological spectrum. You get a lot of people who will say to you that, well, but I don't care about my privacy. I don't care if they see what I'm doing. Like it just doesn't really matter to me. Privacy is not, I don't think anybody would, I don't think any of them, there are people who would, I don't think any of them would argue that privacy isn't a human liberty. Okay. Or if you believe in the concept of rights, that it's not a human right. It certainly is. But people seem to make the claim that they don't care about it and that we're kind of past that. Or you take, for example, what Vint Cerf has said, who's, kind of the godfather of the internet, now like a visionary officer at Google, effectively, who said that he thinks privacy is actually an anomaly. Like it's not a basic part of the human condition. It's not a basic part of society. That walls, all this stuff is completely unnatural, and that privacy, again, is just an anomaly. Here's the funny thing. So I've read Vint Cerf's words about that in the past on the show, and I've always kind of made the same argument, is that, and there's a lot of psychological research to bolster this. And that is that really people won't be completely honest unless they feel like there's no real ramifications to the words that they say. Okay. And that, how you create an environment where there's no ramifications to what they say. Well, in meat space, in IRL, in real life, you do that by having, kind of you talk to people that aren't going to judge you or will accept you and love you regardless of what you happen to say. And will talk it out with you if they think that there's something up or disturbing or whatever, That's one way how you do it in meat space. Online, you do it by encrypted, anonymized communications, or maybe not even encrypted, just anonymized to where it's not attached to an account. If it's attached to an account, yeah, you want it encrypted, in a perfect world situation. Okay, but that's how you allow for that. That's how you get that freedom of expression. But again, so many people I hear say to me that, well, I don't care if I don't have privacy. I don't care. All right, fine. I'm giving up my privacy and you can do whatever you want with all my data, blah, blah, blah. Make millions of dollars off of me and I don't get a penny of it because I just get to use your services. And of course, I'd love to see somebody say that the use of those services, for the average everyday person really, pays them back what Facebook makes off of what they collect about you. But you see, here's the thing. When Sarah Ha comes out and now everybody, so many people are using it. It is so popular. I think that throws all those arguments right out the fucking door. Somehow that people don't want privacy or that people don't care about privacy anymore, because an article we're going to read later is talking about how privacy is dead. Clearly it's not, because an app like this is so wildly popular. Because people do finally feel like they can freely express themselves again. I know that, people have this concern about Twitter where because it's anonymous, people will say dastardly, terrible things, blah, blah, blah. Well, some friends of mine that I've talked to who have Sarah Ha accounts, they've even said that, no, actually, they haven't received a single bad thing. Like it's all been very loving, very nurturing, very nice stuff. And a lot of people are getting that, or they're getting jokey stuff. It seems like most people aren't really being that crass. Now, if it was a celebrity, it'd probably be a different story because, once you get past a certain number of people, yeah, I'm sure things can kind of get bad. But, that's one of the beauties of the Sarah Ha app, of the Sarah Ha service, is that, it kind of lends itself to keeping small and limited what you can do within it. It's almost Snapchat for text in a way, but again, the beauty is you don't actually have to have an account. So, but I think people really do care about privacy. I think people really do enjoy having at least the option of anonymity. I don't think humans are saying to themselves right now, well, I think there are some that are trying to convince themselves of it, but I don't think the average everyday person is like, yeah, I don't want privacy anymore. I don't give a shit. But that's the argument that a lot of these people will make, or that they're willing to trade it for something else. No, it seems like even if they do trade it by, being on Facebook and things like this, they still want those platforms where, no, I don't have to give you that. So it's not all or nothing. It's not zero sum. So I think Sarah Ha, makes an excellent point that no, people still very much care about privacy. They still very much care about anonymity. They still very much care about a lot of these things that are genuine human liberties, in my opinion. Now, with that said, and again, I know some people are already comparing it to, like, there was that app that was popular in Silicon Valley called Secret, where supposedly, like, probably a lot of big name people were sharing. Big name people, in tech giants were sharing insider information on there. And eventually that app, went the way of the dodo. People, whatever, got tired of it or something, or maybe they just got concerned. With Secret, I think you had to create an app, you had to create an account. So that's a problem, because then it could eventually get attached back to you. Again, the beauty of Sarah Ha is, no, you don't have to make an account for anything. And you need to make an account if you want to receive it. But if you want to send, which arguably is the more important thing, if you just receive stuff from people, so what? But if you want to, people can't go to like sovryn.zog.ninja and they can't see all the messages that people send me. So, again, this is very anonymous. So to send things, you don't need an account at all. And you could you could do it on Tor if you wanted to, okay? Power up your Tor browser, have all your VPNs and everything on, and then you're totally, if you want to be really sure that nobody's going to know, then rock and roll, you could do that. So yeah, the popularity of this, I think, really speaks to the exact opposite. And one could also argue, the fact that, like, the orders of magnitude increase of the percentage of users using the Signal app and others shows that no, people really do give a shit about privacy. And it's not an anomaly. There's something innate that kind of wakens up within people, even in our surveillance society, that says, ooh, an anonymous service, I want to use it. I got excited about using Sarah Ha. Are you kidding me? And I'm sure I'm not even close to their demographic. So, and I wanted to test it out anyway for the show, but no, I thought it was actually pretty cool. So I want to read to you some of the Sarah Ha comments, because some of these that I got are relevant to the show, and some of them are critiques. Some of them are, I think, complete misunderstandings. And I mean that in a nice way. Okay. I want to cover them. So let's read them. Opening up the my sovryn.zog.ninja page here. Let's see. We'll start at the bottom. I started listening to the show because of Dr. Murphy. Of course, that's the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the love of my life. Your personality has gotten me hooked onto the show, and I like to listen while I am working out. Your energy level keeps me pumped while I lift weights. It's like a Hack 5 rock concert. Keep it up, comrade. Hell yeah. So, see, very nice. The first message I got was actually very nice. It wasn't, oh, this is anonymous, I'm going to be evil, I'm going to be mean, blah, blah. Even though, yeah, I can understand. Even I kind of had the expectation that would happen. But regardless, let's see. You do amazing work. Keep it up. P.S. We still need to do a podcast together sometime. See, now there's a clue where I think I know exactly who that is. And I'm not going to say who, but I think I know who you are. Let's see. There's another one that I know came from Stephanie. So I'll save that. Sometimes, let's see, and only because, like, it's using words that I know are between her and I. But anyway, sometimes I worry that I agree with you too much. There's one. Woo, yeah, be worried about that, please, because I'm insane. Yeah, I'll say this quick. On so many things, there's things that, of course, I absolutely want to be right about and that I enjoy being right about or whatever. There are so many things where I can't wait, so many predictions, so many other things that I have that I'm like, I just hope I'm so wrong. But, well, it doesn't often turn out that way. Anyway, and of course, please, never ever make a cult of personality around me, please. I already had some people kind of offer it, and they're like, no, I don't want it. I'm not interested. Let's see. I wish you wouldn't encourage people to say horrible things to you. So yeah, when I first shared this, I was like, all right, say all the horrible things. Like I said, even I kind of expected it, that it would just be bad, but it ended up not being. Then there's another one where it's just my name look like it's being yelled out with a lot of I's and everything. I like that. I love hearing my name yelled out. Woo. Here's this one. Ooh, baby, you're one hot nerd whose intellect is clear in speech and actions. I want to get in on this action. And then there's a volcano exploding at the end of it. Woo, rock and roll, baby. Well, anyway, thank you. I love it. Thank you so much. I'm honored by that. Anyway, let's see here. All right, here's where we start to get into some of the critical. You seem to have a strange contempt for the notion of self-defense as a basic human right. It's easy to take that ground as a muscular white guy in a laid-back state, which I'll stop right there for a second. Not an unfair assessment of who I am. Okay, and I understand the point that they're bringing up. Muscular white. Yeah, I mean, I'm 6'1". Yep, I work out a lot. Yeah, I've got muscles. Not boasting. I'm just saying I've got arms and more. And I'm white, so, that, look, okay, people are going to argue about this, whatever, I don't care. White privilege is a thing. It just is, okay? I'm not going to get messed with cops nearly as much as a black person is. It's a fact of life, okay? Right now. It's not a fact of life, it's a fact of society, I should say. In a laid-back state. Yeah, I'm not like a really intense I'm really not. I'm not an intense person or somebody that's going around looking for trouble or, that I'm nervous or something like that. Anyway, no one is going to bother you. Yep, I think there's some truth to that. There's a little more to that, but I'll keep reading. But not everyone has it so easy. So the overall point here is the claim that and there's, by the way, as far as I can tell, there's no character limit on how much you can write here. So it's not like people are forced to be brief and there's room for misinterpretation or something. But they just send a quick message, and I get it. So the strange contempt for the notion of self-defense is a basic human right. Okay. This, and I appreciate the person sending this. So any of my critiques, I'm not really leveling at you. But this is something that I get a lot. I get a lot of critiques about this. This is one of the number one things that people disagree with me on. I'm not a fan of guns. I do not think the use of lethal force is okay in any situation. It doesn't mean I want to take away your guns. It also doesn't mean, because I'm an anarchist, I'm not going to ban shit. I'm not going to make any laws. I'm not going to make any rules on you. Okay? But the other thing that also means, just because I'm against lethal force does not mean I'm against self-defense. This is so telling of the point that I'm often trying to make whenever people ask me to talk about guns or talk about self-defense or lethal force or any of this shit. I'm not a pacifist, okay? I'm not. It's so ironic and it's so telling that the instant you talk against guns, people think you are against self-defense. Why? Why is self-defense instantly equated with lethal force? That is such a huge problem in I guess the popular mentality, because I get the criticism all the time. It's like, so you don't want people to defend yourselves? Why? Because I don't like people using guns? I don't want people to defend yourselves? Is that crazy? It's crazy. No one's making that claim. I am fully supportive of self-defense. I have taken Krav Maga for years. I don't love to have to use it, but I am a huge supporter of self-defense. I am totally on board with self-defense. Okay? I'm just not a big one for guns. I'm not the guy that's out there saying it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to carry my AK-47, blah, blah. And I've talked about all this stuff so many countless fucking times. I'm not going to get into it here. I just want to address, please, look, I don't want to, I shouldn't, I'm not. I want to say I'm sorry, but that's not what I mean. I shouldn't have to apologize. People shouldn't automatically equate someone being against lethal force meaning that they're against self-defense. That's part of the problem that I talk about. Like, I mean, why? Okay, so look, we're going to get into a little bit of political talk here. We're going to get into it in the next segment too. All right. So if the people that listen for a lot of tech, you're going to get some politics here. Okay. That I will apologize for. When I bring up critiques of the NAP And that being the non-aggression principle, okay, which basically means that, you don't start aggression, don't aggress on somebody else. And that aggression applies to generally people that believe in the non-aggression principle or subscribe to it, say that, like, even if you do something to their property, that is effectively hurting them. Okay, not going to get into that argument, whatever. One of the caricatures that gets made of people that subscribe to the NAP is that if you just accidentally stepped on their lawn, they have the right to shoot you. And here's the thing. So when you bring that up to people, like, come on, isn't that kind of crazy to say that, like, because somebody breaks the NAP, you automatically get to go to, lethal force. You automatically get to go to the most extreme justice, effectively, even though I wouldn't call it necessarily justice. They'll say that, oh, no. Like that's just somebody being stupid. Or they're saying, no, you're making a caricature. Oh, you're painting us with a broad brush. Oh, you're doing this. But here's the funny thing is that anytime you talk bad about lethal force, the same exact fucking people, instantly think that, like for me, that I'm saying you can't defend yourself. No. So like, I don't think that when you say that people defend the NAP and defend the idea that if somebody accidentally like fell on your lawn or something, that you could shoot them. I think they really do believe that that's okay. Because again, anytime somebody talks self-defense, you instantaneously equate that to guns. You instantaneously equate that to a device designed with one purpose, not to knock down fruits out of a tree, okay, but to kill. That's all that its purpose is. So people are like, well, do you want to ban cars because people get killed by cars? Cars aren't designed to kill. The gun has one purpose. Look, I don't care if you have guns. Own all the fucking guns you want. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to support any legislation against your guns. No, none of it. I'm an anarchist. But holy shit, could you do me the one favor of separating the term self-defense from guns? I'm not saying that guns can't be a part of self-defense. Of course they are. But I'm saying they're not the only goddamn thing. And that's all I ever talk about. I am so specific in my use of the word lethal force. I'm not talking about self-defense. I'm totally on board with you being about self-defense. Now, maybe your claim is that, well, but there's situations that you would, if you don't think using lethal force is okay, there are situations where lethal force is required in a self-defense situation. And so you would effectively ban me from being able to engage in that, blah, blah, blah. All right, first off, I'm not keeping you from doing anything. I am asking you, like, it's already obvious that people are not willing to be creative and not even willing to consider nonviolent or non-lethal alternatives to defending themselves in any situation, whatever it happens to be. And don't even talk to me about war or revolutions or anything like that. That's a whole other fucking story. Okay. And if you really want me to, hey, message me on Sarah Ha and I'll talk about it. But you want to talk to me about revolutions being used for fucking achieving liberty? Violent revolutions? My goddamn ass they will. That they work. Bullshit. So anyway, the point that I was trying to make is that I think people, like, if you're not willing to explore the possibilities for nonviolent or non-lethal resolution, okay, to a situation that you're in, non-lethal forms of self-defense, whatever, if you're not willing to explore those, I have a hard time believing that you are willing to take the time, because it's laziness. I have a hard time believing that you are willing to take the time to go through the amount of training that should be required. Now, okay, not a law, nothing like that. I'm saying, like, in one's own head for how to handle a handgun, and that you don't just buy it and you're just like, all right, well, I just point and click, or, I point and pull, right? And yeah, that worries me. I mean, are you doing stress shooting at all? Are you doing any, stress shooting where both targets are moving so that you make sure you don't hit an innocent bystander of some kind in the situation that you're in, or you don't care because when your life's on the line, nobody's innocent? Is that kind of the way of thinking for you? It takes months to learn how to shoot a gun. And if you can't take the same amount of time to explore non-lethal alternatives, like I said, I'm very skeptical that you're willing to take the time to even explore the proper way to use lethal modes of self-defense. There's all kinds of problems with this, folks. There's all kinds of problems. And look, I know I've killed people. All right, I was in the U.S. Army. I know. What, you think I haven't handled a gun? Are you kidding me? I lost count. Nobody cares when I say to them, look, I'll pull people aside, maybe that I think are being a little too gung ho, particularly maybe in New Hampshire in the Free State Project or something, and I'll say, I want to spare you. I want to spare you the feeling after. No matter, I don't care if somebody stole your wallet or is going to hurt somebody, blah, blah, blah. Look, I know those are all tragedies, all this tragic stuff. Who knows? Everybody brings up the rape case, even though those same people say that rape doesn't exist and that we don't live in a rape culture or anything like that. But then, the instantly you want to take away their guns. They're like, but what if somebody's getting raped? Wait a minute. I thought people didn't get raped. Which is it, Jack? So tragedy's happening, okay? I get it. It doesn't matter how tragic it is. After you take that life, the look in the mirror, the nightmares, everything else that comes along with you doing something that is so antithetical to a biological component of the human condition, that being empathy, it's going to haunt you forever. You're going to have sleepless nights. You're probably going to throw up. It's going to suck. And it doesn't get easier. It doesn't matter how many lives you take. You really don't get, you can disassociate, but then you start getting into the realms of, all kinds of problems start occurring at that point. But even when I tell them that, no, they don't care. They don't care. I'd love to just say it that way. Look, I just want to spare you the pain. And they don't give a shit. So fine, look, you can have your guns. You can engage in self-defense. You have a great time, baby. You do all that stuff. I am not against you. I'm against lethal force, but I am not against you. You do what you do. But please, just do me the one favor of finally, let's detach the term self-defense from automatically considering lethal force, because everybody reacts to me in that way, and so I assume that's the way everybody thinks, is that self-defense is lethal force. It's not strange, okay, my strange contempt. It's not strange at all. It's based on the fact I've taken lives. I've done what some would consider self-defense in those situations overseas, what some would consider, again, I'm speaking in a conventional sense, not in the way that I think about it, okay? I feel terrible about it. I've done that. It's not strange. It's based upon life experience that most people don't have. Most people that own a gun don't fucking have. But you don't care. Whatever. Now, I love the old saying. I don't think it's actually an ancient Chinese saying, but he who thinks there's no alternatives to, what is it? He who thinks there's no alternatives to violence has never had a mosquito on their balls. There are. Let's explore them. At least make the option to explore these things. But instead, no. Everybody's just like, hey, Ruger, hey, whatever company, you want to sponsor my show? Not this show. And I'll just spend a second. I'm talking about this way more than I wanted to, and I apologize, okay? But, you sent me an anonymous thing, so I'm giving you a response. I know some people also, they're like, well, but, what if they're lining you up on the trains and all that? Look, it ain't that world anymore, man. Nobody gets lined up on trains. Now they just use a drone from 2 miles away and they take you out and they track you by your SIM card. I know. There is no more lining up on the trains. You're crazy if you think you could take on like the U.S. Army or any modern military. You are literally nuts if you think that you have some kind of a chance. You say, well, but the terrorists, they're the terrorists, they're able to stand up against the U.S. Army. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm not unconvinced that ISIS, if any, at the very least, it's a byproduct of the U.S. military. How do you think they got all those weapons so fast? Who the fuck armed Osama bin Laden? You think they're going to leave those weapon caches for you, Mr. Libertarian? No. Oh, man. Okay, I went way out of bounds for a tech show, but I'm going to let that stand. I'm going to leave that shit in. Let's move on to another subject. I probably just lost all of my. Look, I don't care. I'm an anarchist. I'm not going to do anything. You can own guns. I don't care. Have I made that clear enough yet? These are my opinions, my thoughts, how I feel about it. You can take them for what you will. I know there's people that agree with me. There's people who disagree with me. I understand some people are little people or whatever. They're not a big muscular white guy and they have to defend themselves against much bigger attackers, potentially rapists, because I actually think there are lots of rapists out there. Well, not lots, but there's enough for a rape culture anyway. I certainly, agree with that. And you've got to do something about it. Do something about it. Okay? I'm just asking you to consider, to be very clear, to be very intentional in what you're doing. That's all I'm talking about. I thought that the liberty movement and anarchism and all that was all about questioning the status quo and about questioning all these different constructs that we have that comprise society. But when you question guns, when you question lethal force, oh no. And I'm not saying the person on Sarah Ha was being that mean or anything, but look, I have no contempt for self-defense. I have a contempt for lethal force. Yes, that is not self-defense. Okay, moving on. Some of your fans, some of your former fans are of the alt-right persuasion. There is a fine line between Stirner, and of course that's Max Stirner, Stirner anarchism and survivalist anarchism, and some people are afraid that if we open borders, we will never have a little anarchist paradise. No. So I get that. I know that a lot of my listeners or former listeners are alt-right. No, we'll never have a little anarchist paradise if the borders are closed and people can't move to where they could build one. No, that statement is diametrically off. Okay, you can't have anything remotely like an anarchist paradise if there are state-funded walls that are put up that keep you from getting around. That's it. And if you're worried about these, look, this drives me so insane. You're so scared of terrorists, of Mexicans, of Syrians, of Muslims, of whoever coming into this country when you've got cops, you've got, you have the own U.S. military, you have all of these organizations that are not a far stretch to themselves claim that they are terrorist organizations, oppressive regimes, and want to destroy your freedom-loving culture. You're telling me police don't want to destroy your freedom-loving culture? You're crazy. Go smoke weed in a state that doesn't have it legalized now. Tell me that they care about your culture. The barbarians aren't at the gates. The barbarians created the gates and they're keeping you in them. Fucking ridiculous. The fear, go to the Middle East, go to those countries. Believe me, they're actually, a lot of them, they're going to love you as an American, okay? Because they're like, ooh, it's almost like when you go to Japan, ooh, big American boy, or something like that. And they get all excited. I know, I've been there. Those Muslim gals, believe me, they are ready to be all over you. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I mean, I don't know how many police officers there are in the United States, but I bet it's orders of magnitude larger than the amount of people that are in Al-Qaeda, have ever been in Al-Qaeda, or in any of this shit. There's no way. And what, do you think every single, like all the millions of Mexicans down in Mexico, that they all just want to come right up to America? No. Hell, it's going to be like the 5th largest economy in like the next 4 years, according to most metrics. And that's not done by liberals. That's done by conservatives. Those numbers. Why would they leave if they're going to be the 5th largest economy in the fucking world? You can make money down there, baby. Well, they want free stuff. Well, apparently not everybody wants to be free stuff. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such huge industry down there. Some people like to work, I guess. Who knew? Oh, those arguments. All right. Let's see. When you rip on the alt-right, you sound kind of Jewy. Well, ethnically, I am, and probably the person that messaged us knows that. So, you know, I'm going to guess if you're kidding, haha, you know, because I can take a Jew joke. I make my own. If you're not kidding, fuck you. So, let's see. You should, let's see. If I weren't taken and I weren't so young, I'd be all over you. That's very, very sweet, very kind, I guess. I love you. I love Stephanie. You're both wonderful human beings. I hope I get to meet you both someday and give you big hugs. I love to give hugs. Right on. Hugs solve all of this, don't they? They really do. A good cuddle. Nothing like a good cuddle. Let's see what else we have here. All right, here's the last one, last one that I'll read. Have you been completely against Ethereum from the start? Do you remember saying, I love Ethereum? I swear I heard it. Perhaps I didn't. Not the biggest deal in the world. Okay, so when Ethereum first came out, I was open-minded to it. And I remember specifically saying this would have been like on season 1 of Sex and Science Hour. So years ago, back like when Ethereum just started, was like just announced. I was like, oh yeah, I think I see what you guys are saying here. Okay, I dig this, you know, like I'm willing to give this a chance, blah, blah, blah. But within like a week, honestly, of even making that statement, I had conversations with, you know, good friends, people in the space and everything. And I came to the same, you know, the conclusion that I hold now, which is it's not Turing complete, it's Turing vulnerable. The lack of features in Bitcoin is a security feature, not a bug, not a problem. It's not an issue. You don't want that all built into it, okay? And in fact, like the very creation of blockchain technology does not lend itself to being an overarching platform like Ethereum. It just fucking doesn't, okay? Like the speed's not there. There's all kinds of issues that really just, you know, and security issues as well, that don't really make that a great idea. Blockchain technology is great for specific use cases, not this Ethereum style shit. Okay, not to that scope, that unlimited scope anyway. I don't mind things being platforms. I think that there's an interesting case to be made for that and some interesting experiments being done in that, certainly. But anyway. All right. So yeah, so there's Sarah Ha. Those are the things I got. So yeah, at one point, I don't know if I said I love Ethereum, but I said that I was, you know, open-minded to it and whatever, and I wasn't so against it. So for 1 week, you're absolutely right. I was not against it. You know, and I think I did an interview with Anthony Diorio at the time, and you know, for like 1 week, you got me. but not long after, once more of the reality of how they were going to do all this and the implementations were laid out and actually, or things weren't actually coming to fruition, very quickly I figured out, no, this is a terrible idea. So whatever, there you go. Feel better? All right, woo. I will be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Hopefully I didn't lose everybody. Woo! If I didn't lose you, baby, what I tell you, another way I don't want you to lose, I don't want you to lose your wealth. So a great way to not lose your wealth is to store it in something that has a great history of value. That being, gold and silver, baby. And I want you to get it through Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, they've got your hookup. Go to rrbi.co. You can even buy, Bitcoin, what are they at? They're like, Bitcoin's at an all-time high, kissing well over 3,000 right now, right? Man, grab some gold and silver while that high is going on. You did well. You played smart with Bitcoin. Now play smart with some precious metals. Go to rrbi.co, and we thank them so much for being sponsors of Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
Ooh, boy. All right. Well, now let's get into a little more, dare I say, contentious, dare I say, controversial subject matter here for HackSec. In fact, I'm really kind of taking over this part of the show to discuss a subject that, I think needs discussion, that I think needs a lot of coverage, and that is really taken. I know I've been so political in this episode, and again, I apologize. We'll be right back to your largely non-political, even though, look, I'm an anarchist and it colors everything I do. I think being an anarchist is kind of anti-political, but whatever. You know what I mean. We'll be back to all the good tech news and everything, but we're going to talk about Google, and we're going to talk about a story that broke about a week ago, that being Gizmodo's actually the one that broke it. Exclusive. Here's the full 10-page, I guess maybe Motherboard broke, whatever. Anyway, here's the full 10-page anti-diversity screed circulating internally at Google. Now, what is this? What is this screed? I think just about everybody's really heard about it. Some other libertarian / ANCAP hosts, podcasts, whatever, have been talking about it, and I've been a little surprised, honestly, at their reaction towards this whole thing. But anyway, this has to do with a guy named James Damore, who was supposedly, according to some claims, like in the top 2% of performers as far as workers at Google, which of course are called Googlers. James Damore, after this, who was a software engineer at Google, after his little screed about anti-diversity at Google, after it went viral, was fired. And some people cheered that on, and others have been very upset about the whole thing. In fact, in particular, there's already been a lot of people who are some of these names? Mike Sovryn, Mike Cernovich, and some others who are very popular in the alt-right. They are pretty much calling for a boycott on Google, which I'll tell you, okay, and we'll break down some of what was said in this 10-page screed about anti-diversity at Google, saying, look, we got to stop these. I mean, pretty much what James Damore was saying is we need to stop these diversity programs within Google that are that are like overlooking better software engineers just to hire women or people of color or something like that. We got to get past all that because it's really killing the company, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, the irony is that, the alt-right took to Twitter, obviously, and started, saying hashtag boycott Google. Like that was all over the place. Now, the hard part for me here is I despise the alt-right, and because I think they're, and I've... I'm not the only one that thinks this way. In fact, I was when I was on the School Sucks podcast in recent months. Well, I guess not so recent months now, but even Brett said, it's like, no, you're not going to get any kind of logical ground with these people. They have no logic in what they're arguing for. They'll just twist everything, into their little. He made the point about logic. I am adding in they will just twist things into their little tyrannical views. Though I don't know that he would argue against that regardless. So. The alt-right is saying boycott Google. Here's the problem. That's a hashtag I'd fucking make. Yeah, fucking boycott Google already. And it's funny because so many people clearly are not stopping using Google. They're not deleting their Google accounts. I love the real reality check that has come out of this isn't the problem with diversity programs. The real reality check, and there's a lot more I want to say about this. The real reality check that came out of this is just how tied in you people are to Google and how you kind of, if you're just the average schmo, you can't get away from them. Like suddenly you're not going to be really using YouTube anymore. And who the fuck is going to do that? Like really, I know some of the most privacy centric, people. I know people that don't even have a Twitter account, that you're lucky if you can get them by email. They totally recognize all of the problems with Google. They think Google is heinous in what it does, not because of this firing of James Damore, but because of their business model itself, who still watch YouTube. You're not going to boycott Google. Okay. I'm trying to get people away from Google services, and I try to raise that as much as I can, or at least stop using them as much as you can, blah, blah, blah. But you're sure as fuck not going to get any substantial, not like the numbers that maybe the alt-right would want. Are you going to get people, because it's got to be the amount of people necessarily that would send the market signal to Google, that, okay, you need to change your ways, or maybe you need to rehire James Damore or something like that, right? Those kind of numbers are never going to happen. They're just not with what Google does. It's not like Facebook. I think if it was boycott Facebook, you could actually make a difference. I think there's the possibility of a future where people really aren't using Facebook. That is a totally possible future. But Google, Google's YouTube, Google's Docs, Google's so many different services. As to where Facebook is some other services as well, but it's still at the end of the day, it's Messenger and the timeline. There's Instagram, that's another story. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a one-trick pony, and so you have a single point of failure that you could affect a market change upon. Google, no. Sorry. I'm with you. I'm with you in boycott Google. I am not with you in any of your other just asinine ways of thinking, okay, at all. Which honestly, I'm not surprised the alt-right was supporting it, because much of what James Damore, was the same way. Now, there is the point, again, I'm not going to read the whole 10-page screed here. I'm just not. There is the point where James Damore makes it very clear that he considers himself a classical liberal. Okay, now a classical liberal, usually in the term, when somebody uses that today, I'm not saying there aren't some degree of different terms for that. He says, like right here, and it's in kind of the footnotes, the numbered footnotes that he has on this 10-page paper of his. He says, of course, I may be biased and only see evidence that supports my viewpoint. In terms of political biases, I consider myself a classical liberal, and I strongly value individualism and reason. I'd be very happy to discuss any of the document further and provide more citations. So that's an interesting thing to bring up there. But classical liberal generally means he's libertarian, or maybe an anarcho-capitalist or something like that, or an objectivist in that, he's saying he strongly values individualism and reason. I certainly strongly value individualism and reason as well. I can kind of appreciate that aspect of this. But this points at a few things kind of right out of it, okay? And there's a link in the show notes if you want to read the entire 10-page thing, okay? But again, there's a lot to say about this. The fact that he got fired should not be seen as a surprise. Certainly not to Sovryn Tech listeners. I have heard it. I have 2 points of internal Google anecdotes that I want to bring to you. One is that I've been tipped off years ago. I talked about this years ago. I said this at events on big stages. Google will not hire anarchists. They don't. If they think you're an anarchist, they're not going to hire you. Somehow this guy got through, maybe he became an anarchist as he was working at Google, or he became classically liberal as he was working at Google. So they don't want to hire these kind of people. Why the fuck is it a shock that they would fire them? Okay, now that's somewhat of an anecdote, and I have no official documentation, but longtime listeners of Sovryn Tech know I've brought that up over and over and over again, that they will not hire anarchists. I know some anarchists who work for Google, but they're only there because they've been acquired in. They are an acqui-hire. Okay. Now, that said, so they won't hire that. The other thing was, and I talked about this, I think I talked about it on a Patreon episode, and I'll reveal a little bit of it here. I was on a train leaving New York, okay, or heading into New York, where some Googlers, some Google workers were talking. They revealed some information that I talked about on Patreon this was back in April. Okay. So not, the people that were saying this stuff, I could have had their jobs, because they were saying so much shit that was not public knowledge. It was crazy. Okay. And I wasn't the only one on the train. People can corroborate what was said. But one of the things that was said is a person said, I want to make sure that in these companies, and she said, and in Google, that people of good politic are there. Okay, there's political battles going on within these companies, no doubt about that. When you get to a company the size of Alphabet/Google, well, first off, it turns into an umbrella company like Alphabet. Second off, you have a billion different opposing views within there, and they are largely allowed to continue on. Like I said, there's the anarchist thing, which I think is bolstered by the fact, and I've talked about this countless times as well, and I keep testing it. Okay, I have a test device. I keep testing it. No matter how many times in Google search, in Google Now, okay, that you type in, or whatever they call it now, when you type in anarchist, you will never get a card about anarchism. But if you type in Kanye or Bill Gates or anything once, just once, you get inundated for months with news about whatever the fuck that was. But you type in anarchism, they won't give you anything. You know, the little information cards or stories that you might be interested, you don't get a stitch. Nothing. That's why I'm kind of bolstered. I feel a little bolstered in that, or I feel that position is bolstered, that idea is bolstered, that notion is bolstered, that claim is bolstered, that Google won't hire anarchists. Okay? So, I mean, test it for yourself. Do it on a dummy account, because, the algorithm, well, really, it should be, for me, and like I said, for me, it really should be easy. The algorithm should instantly say, because how often I write about anarchism, talk about anarchism, type anarchism, whatever, it should be automatic. I shouldn't even have to use Google now. It should be coming up for me, and it doesn't. Okay? Now, in my opinion, a lot of the most egregious things that get said in this, and the bulk of the reasons I think that maybe he was fired have to do with actually in his footnotes. There's some parts where I completely disagree with him. Like there's a segment about de-emphasizing empathy. I'll read it here. I've heard several calls for increased empathy on diversity issues. While I strongly support trying to understand how and why people think the way they do, relying on effective empathy, feeling another's pain, causes us to focus on anecdotes, favor individuals similar to us, and harbor other irrational and dangerous biases. Being emotionally unengaged helps us better reason about the facts. Fuck no. Fuck no. Okay. I would fire a guy instantly for this. If he felt that way, because I think empathy is now look, yes, empathy is a bullshit buzzword, and you're getting a bunch of bullshit gurus, particularly in Silicon Valley, trying to push this onto people. But he's making it very clear, saying, look, if we have emotion, we got to be, he says, being emotionally unengaged helps us better reason about the facts. Horseshit. I'll quote, in fact, he seems to be, into individualism and reason, probably likes Ayn Rand. Well, I'll quote you Nathaniel Branden, who very, very much is tied to Ayn Rand, and certainly was a big name in objectivism, and didn't really disagree with objectivism in the small o sense of the word. And it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. In order to think clearly, we have to feel deeply. You do not get emotionally unengaged. That's a recipe for disaster. That's where you end up with, all kinds of problems. And a lot of the problems that we talk about on Sovryn Tech over and over again is that when you remove that human element, the feeling, the emotions, you end up with some really, in my opinion, some ugly tyrannical shit. It's funny. Everybody's calling Google tyrannical. They're throwing around some really, really, really crazy terms, quite frankly, about this. For one example, a term being bandied about, the word totalitarian is being used by some commentators about what Google has done here in firing this person. Again, you have something, obviously there's a Silicon Valley-wide push for empathy. While some of that is BS, if he didn't have that last sentence in this, I might be able to give him a pass on saying that maybe he's talking about the BS empathy, but no, he makes it very clear. Being emotionally unengaged helps us better reason about the facts. No, you can't get to the facts without being emotionally engaged, as well as using logic and reason. You can't. So that's crap. Like I said, I'd fire him for that alone. But the other parts here, let's see, here's footnote number 4. For footnote number 2 we already covered. That's where he said he's classical liberal. I wouldn't be surprised if Google fired him for that, because they just don't, in my opinion, I don't think they allow for those people. Not unless it's an acqui-hire, like I said. Number 4, for heterosexual romantic relationships, men are strongly judged by status and women by beauty. Again, this has biological origins and is culturally universal. I think that can very well be interpreted as James here saying that, look, this is how things are, and if you fight against it, you're going to run into troubles. Google is obviously a company all about transcending like so much of the status quo, and maybe in a direction I would argue that I don't think is okay. They're so about like kind of getting beyond this. I mean, really, I think they're a company that's looking to, kind of get to transhumanism. That's part of the reason they have Calico, where they're trying to solve death and all these other things. They're really trying to get past a lot of this stuff. I'm not saying that necessarily in a complimentary fashion, but this is a guy who is obviously, thinking old world, old school, and that does not fit with the company program. So he got fired. What a surprise. What if, say somebody was working for here, let's give an analogy. Not that proof from analogy is proof, okay? Or proof by analogy is proof. Let's say it was the 90s with Microsoft or something, okay? And let's say somebody said, look, I'm really pushing, we need to be open sourcing, Microsoft Office, and we want, and he was pushing for it on some kind of ethical grounds, some kind of like human liberties grounds, which one could argue for open source in that way if they wanted to. Would Microsoft fire that person? Well, fuck yeah, because they'd probably be worried the guy's going to leak information about them or do who knows what. Yeah, Bill Gates would fire him on the spot. And would anybody complain about that? Well, I would certainly say, oh man, it's like, wow, this guy, he got fired because he wanted to open source stuff. Microsoft, it's where now Microsoft is open sourcing a whole ton of shit. That's why I say Microsoft in the 90s. I would disagree with it, but at the same time, I get it. A business can fire, more or less who they want. I mean, it's a business. I understand that concept. That's the other part of this that is really, really blowing my mind. In fact, there was a thread where MK Lords, who of course is a producer for Sovryn Tech and a great friend, there was a thread on someone's popular, shall we say, post about this, Facebook post about this, where, she just went after him and said, what are you guys doing, complaining about this guy getting fired? This is private business. Aren't they allowed to hire and fire whoever they want? Isn't that, always the argument? And it was so funny because then everybody kind of came out defending, saying, oh, well, yeah, of course they can fire him, but, I don't have to like it, blah, blah, blah. And in this part, that seeing those arguments, in fact, I'll read some of them because it drove me up the fucking wall. Here's one guy saying, let's see, Google can do what it wants, but it doesn't mean we've got to give them money or give their products value. Granted, Google is let's see. No, that wasn't, all right, we'll go down. He said, don't get me wrong. I could care less what Google does so long as they aren't infringing upon my liberties. They're free to hire or fire whomever they want. This story merely shows how they do things. As a consumer, it's noteworthy. Okay, so this guy, in this whole thread, again, on a very popular person's post about it, popular within libertarianism, that point, yeah, I get it. Okay, they can hire and fire, they can do whatever they want as long as they don't infringe on human liberties. Like, I read that and my mind was blown. I'm like, so you guys are getting mad about this guy's memo, and you're saying this is a human liberties case? Holy shit. How about all the fucking data collection and anti-privacy, which last time I checked, privacy was a human liberty. How about all the anti-privacy that Google engages in on a daily fucking basis? And it took some guy who wrote some crazy shit, and I think it is largely, to finally get you to wake up and say, oh, wait a minute. Whoa, what's Google's corporate culture here? I guess obviously they weren't listening to Sovryn Tech for very long. Of course, I don't blame them because well, I'm not going to get into that, but sometimes I go a little, woo, but holy shit, which is it? And it's funny too, because you have all these people arguing for this. And look, like every time that I have complained about a tech company, I usually get some anarcho-capitalist or libertarian saying they're a business, they can do what they want. saying I should shut my mouth. Oh, but when it's one of your boys that's trying to get everybody back to the conservative side, when it's one of the boys trying to, put women in their place and all of this, oh, then it's bad. But when they're actually really infringing on human liberties, when they're not going after the police for when police are masking their cars as Google Maps cars and they don't take any kind of legal action about it, I mean, fuck that, that's infringing on your liberties. I mean, the list goes a mile long. Listen to 5 years of Sovryn tech and you'll hear it. But now you're against Google? Oh man, maybe I'll link to this. Maybe I'll link to this Facebook post because I mean, go through it. It's amazing how quickly suddenly analogies about black people and even NAMBLA and all this other crazy shit just suddenly starts coming up, and the misogyny is so fucking in force. I mean, you can't miss it. It's so obvious. They don't care about Google. They just don't like the fact that one of the biggest companies in the world isn't going to put up with a bunch of conservative nonsense. That's what's going on here. I would be a little more sympathetic towards your concerns over James Damore getting fired if these same people were taking stronger stands against every other, infringement upon the human condition and human liberty. Okay. And I'm not saying firing James Damore is some kind of infringement in that way, but if you were the ones that are totally provable, are unquestionable, you can see it, you can look at the code yourself if you really needed to, okay, that are out there, maybe then I'd feel a little more sympathetic towards your position about this guy getting fired, but I don't. And the guy goes on. He starts talking about IQ tests, which are fucking bullshit. Okay, I mean this guy is a caricature of all of these people. Of so many libertarians and ANCAPs and whatever else. I mean it's unbelievable. I mean it's no wonder that he's being defended by them. And look, let's talk business. Okay, let's talk business. I've run a business before. I know the deal. When you are coming out of a situation where you have so many stories, I mean, social whistleblowing, effectively, stories coming out about how so many VCs are just engaging in either literal rape or in just completely obvious sexual harassment, deplorable behavior, straight up. And even guys like that people think are, oh, what a great family man, like Chris Sacca. Oh, guess not. When you've got all those stories going on, anybody that publishes anything remotely, like say where okay, no, we got to stop doing these programs that center on women. Fuck yeah, I'm not surprised that the guy gets fired when Silicon Valley is dealing with this, with this narrative going around. And I would argue reality. I mean, that's the funny thing, too, is he's writing it all off. He's like, oh, yeah, James Damore here. He says, here, I'll bring up the direct quote where he says specifically, yes, in a national aggregate, this is from footnote number 9, women have lower salaries than men for a variety of reasons. For the same work, though, women get paid just as much as men. Considering women spend more money than men and that salary represents how much the employees sacrifice, we really need to rethink our stereotypes around power. So he's admitting that on average, and yes, it's true. There's fascinating statistics about all this. In fact, there was a recent episode of the Workationing podcast where they talked about this, where being a woman, you just like in most industries, you make significantly less. Even though you have all the same skill, maybe the same age, all these same factors that maybe a guy would have. Okay, so he's admitting to that, but then he's just like kind of writing it all off, saying, oh, no, but they get paid the same, so it doesn't matter. No, James, you're missing it. They get paid the same? That does no way equates to treatment in Silicon Valley, which we know is terrible. I mean, there's just a billion points that he's completely overlooking and missing. And in my opinion, it all comes from the one particular statement that he made about de-emphasizing empathy and getting rid of emotions. And he says that because you end up concentrating on anecdotes. Wait a minute. What are anecdotes? Anecdotes our individual experiences. But wait a minute, wait, hold on. James, let's go down. James, what did you say here? Footnote number 2. I consider myself a classical liberal and strongly value individualism and reason. So aren't anecdotes important? I mean, I get it. Maybe you're saying they shouldn't be influencing corporate culture or something like that, but that's not really what you're saying, because you're saying we need to just ignore that shit. You know, you're saying we need to get emotions out of the program here. No, this is bad. I mean, this guy. I mean, from reading this, in my opinion, you're looking at the human version of an automaton that really has no understanding of the human condition, or is not. I mean, he's clearly not willing to engage in empathy and try to understand where the problems that women genuinely have to deal with. And if Google favors on that end, then by all means do so. Sovryn Tech favors, having women work with the show. I admit that openly. Isn't that my choice? Hooters favors women. Is he going to go after fucking Hooters? See how well that goes over with your alt-right friends and your conservative friends. Oh, this is a mess. The mess. I mean, yeah, he's ridiculous. There's a million reasons why Google would fire this guy. I've covered some of them. They all make sense. There's nothing. I mean, Google fired him because of his political persuasion. Well, I mean, there's an old rule about don't talk about religion and politics at work, because people usually end up getting fired over it. Like, I mean, this is how things have worked. You want Google to be different? Okay, so you want Google to look forward. This guy's looking backwards. I mean, this is so off base. Yeah, I have no problem with Google firing this guy, because we talk about this all the time on Sovryn Tech. We talk about corporate culture constantly. A recent case in the blockchain space, which you think, oh, well, they're really forward thinking. Maybe that's, we can't wait for blockchains to take over. That way Google could finally come down, right? I'm sure there's some people who are thinking that way. They want to boycott Google. Well, in the blockchain space, you have one of their biggest events in the past year. What was it? Identity 2020. We talked about this. What was one of the main taglines for Identity 2020 is that we got to put an end to sex work. What? Why the fuck does a software engineer have to do anything about sex work other than maybe, improve it? Not fucking eliminate it. It says who? Who are you to decide what people... Sex work is work. Who are you to... I mean, wow. Where are the libertarians for that? They were attending the goddamn thing and speaking at it. Where are the ANCAPs for that? Saying, no, sex work is fine. We're not going to attack that. No. Instead, they just let that go. I'm the only one who argued about that, who said, what the fuck are these fucking coders, blockchain people and software engineers complaining about sex work for? And it's a bunch of bullshit, because I know most of them hire sex workers. That's my biggest problem with this, is that the people complaining about it are fucking hypocrites, every single one of them, for more than one reason. For one, they're taking a stance that I've taken for a while, that, yeah, okay, you want to pay attention to corporate culture. I've said, how many times have I said that? That's one of my oldest sayings. Don't follow the money, follow the attitude, right? Okay, yeah, paying attention to corporate culture is fine. But whenever I would bring up corporate culture and I would say boycott companies and I would say stop using their services or stuff like that, the emails, I could show them to you. The emails would flood in that say they're a business, they can do what they want. Oh, but in this case they can't. Oh, because finally some company is taking a stance against your your conservatism and your little beliefs in biology that have no basis in modern science. That's just one of the worst parts. I mean, and again, to be claiming to be so concerned about human liberties and never raising a peep about how these people have really helped the surveillance state. I mean, believe me, I've had the arguments with ANCAPs who have said, well, Julian Assange's, work against, and I have my own issues with Julian Assange, but Julian Assange's and WikiLeaks' work against Google, it's all circumstantial. Google's not the evil company, blah, blah, blah. I mean, going down this whole thing, like when it was being shown over and over again how their business practices were infringing upon basic human liberties. And you can say, well, but you don't have to use Google services. Yeah, but it affects everybody. That microphone on your Android phone doesn't just listen to you. And no one ever raises a single voice about that. But, somebody, was standing up for men. And we gotta stand up for him because he stood up for men. We gotta get him on the Jordan Peterson show. Yeah. Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, some of what's said in this, there's points of it that make sense and that I completely understand. Okay, but there's the bulk of it, and particularly those footnotes where it's just like, oh no. Where if I was a business owner, oh yeah, yep, I would have done the same thing Google did, straight up. Especially because this guy, if this guy is one of the top 2% performers, I mean, understand that he's talking about these unconscious biases, and he seems to have a degree of self-awareness around it, but he has no problem with the fact that some of those unconscious biases could worm their way into his work, kind of like how you want to make blockchain IDs to put an end to sex work, which who the fuck are you to tell people they can't do sex work? You think that's not going to affect his work? But he doesn't self-analyze. He doesn't self-analyze that far, saying, oh shit, wait a second. That's why we talk about in Sovryn Tech all the time. You want to, in software, in everything you do, you just want to offer options. Not make everything general purpose. Some things are designed for what they're designed for and they get used for that. But you always want to be offering options. But instead you got a guy like this who's, and it's so funny. I mean, what? I get it. He says he's a classical liberal, but like he has no concept of the fact that like a business of this scale, I mean, if he had an understanding of economics, he'd know that a business of this scale shouldn't even like exist, shouldn't even function this way. Like there's no saving a company that size, if it was actually in more of a individualistic or free market or something like that. I mean, he should know that the root of the problem might even just be this. If there is a problem, might be the size of the company. He's obviously, or he seems to be identifying some kind of issues that the company is not at peak efficiency and all that. Well, part of that is fucking obviously you have too many thousands of employees. When you have other companies that are doing at least your bread and butter, that being search, with a 20-person team compared to 20,000. Yeah, I mean, this is just. It's crazy. So that's what I got. I know people wanted me to talk about the story. I mean, I can analyze the paper, break it down. I mean, there's points where I think he himself, James Damore, is completely hypocritical in what he had to say, and that there are very obvious reasons, okay, why, I mean, look, if I could think of a million examples where if you suddenly found yourself in a corporate culture, and not just within your own business, but perhaps with like the corporate culture that is Silicon Valley, when you have, I mean, misogyny is a real thing. Like, the women getting treated, he even admitted it. He said on the national aggregate, absolutely, women do make less, and he's arguing about what are the solutions for all this. Well, look, forget about the money. You have women getting treated significantly worse. It is absolutely provable in Silicon Valley. I mean, the dude bros are doing what they do. And what, you don't want your company to be sensitive, to pay attention to that? Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. This guy getting fired, I mean, hey, whatever. Fire everybody at Google and the company. I'll be a happy boy, but not for the reasons that the alt-right are, just because that entire company, its entire model is straight up it's anti-human liberties. So, and yeah, I can't wait. I'm going to be asking. I know the names. I know some of the names of people that are talking about boycott Google. I'm going to ask them. So, hey, did you watch that YouTube video? And if they say yes, get to that boycotting if you're such a big believer in it. Let's go. Anyway, I'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Ooh, baby. We just mentioned some blockchain stuff. Well, if you want to keep an eye on the cool, the awesome, the history-making really technologies that do exist within the blockchain space. You think Bitcoin, you think, hell, even Litecoin, you think Zcash, you go down the list, stuff like maybe even Zencash, all that. You think like that, you want to go to CryptoCompare.com to keep an eye on all of these technologies, what's going on, the price, the wallets to use, all of that. CryptoCompare.com. It's your hookup. It's a tab I always leave open. You want to check it out. And you can get social on there and keep up with all the latest news. CryptoCompare.com, we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
Tool of the week.
Ooh, baby. All right. So, I'm going to have to... We had two topics that we just spent so long talking about, and I just went on constant tirades. And like I said, next week, a lot more tech. But, this shit turns political, right? And, and the Sarah Ha thing, that was, I used to do that on the show. I used to do a Q&A, and I would get so many, anarchist and liberty questions and all that. So many philosophical questions, I should say, that maybe newer listeners aren't so used to that unless you're a patron, because a lot of the patron questions are that as well, which you can become a patron at sovryntech.com. But anyway, you got some of it this week, and as accepting as I am really of so many of you, I hope you find the same with me. But anyway, let's get into the tool of the week. And this one's actually really, really cool. I mean, really cool. There's a website I want you to check out, send.firefox.com. And you heard Firefox right, so that means this is made by Mozilla. It's not technically a part of Firefox. It's browser agnostic, other than I've heard Safari might have some issues. But what it is, it's a very simple, very slick, it's been vetted, it looks good, sending feature. I think we talked about on Tool of the Week in the past. There was File Pizza, where you upload, or there's a Tor one, Onion Share or something like that, where you upload a file, you just go to a URL, you click on, send file, you upload this file, and then you can just send somebody the URL and then they can download the file. This is very, very slick. You don't need an account. You don't need anything. So it says that it's best to keep it in files under 1 gigabyte. I've tested it with larger and it worked fine, but keep that in mind. But that's all you got to do. Just drag and drop or click the select a file on your computer and you just send somebody the URL. It's encrypted. I'm not going to say that it's the greatest encryption in the world, but it is, because I'm not exactly sure 100% certain behind all the encryption that they're using on it, but it's open source. It's all on GitHub. And it is encrypted. I mean, this is a really, really nice, slick little implementation. It is part of their test pilot web experiment program. I guess you'll say not program as in software. But I hope that they actually keep it. In fact, it'd be really nice if they just made a button in the newest, because they're really touting for Firefox version 57, where I said, look, the Firefox browser is going to be a completely new animal come that time. You're already starting to see some of the Photon UI and everything getting implemented into certain nightly builds on mobile as well as on desktop for Firefox. But if they built this right into Firefox, I think that would be a really, really, it's not using WebRTC as far as I can tell. So that's nice. But build it in as a feature, and I think that could be a pretty cool feature. But yeah, it's like File Pizza. It's like Minilock. Minilock.io was another popular one that's an extension for Chrome that allows you to do it. But this is just really, really easy, really nice. All you got to do, you can share a file, again, best if it's under 1 gigabyte. I don't know what the problem is when it gets beyond that because I haven't run into it. But then you just give somebody the URL, and there's even you could do a password exchange if you needed to. A PIN code exchange, I guess I should say. But you send them the URL, and then they can just download whatever you're sending. It is a really, really nice, very simple, very basic. Anybody could use this, and just a great way to send files quickly. It doesn't store it in the cloud. It only sits there for a day, so you have to download it within a day. I think that's the one kind of limitation on it, but it works. It works beautifully. And again, it's not like File Pizza where it wasn't encrypted. In this case, it is encrypted. So great idea. I like seeing these kind of basic, simple services. Obviously, it's not like Onion Share either where it goes through Tor, but it is encrypted. So check it out, send.firefox.com, and they're just calling it Send. That's all they're calling the service. So I recommend using it. I'm going to be using it actually a lot now. So I hope it's something that they keep going and it comes out of the test pilot stage. We'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech.
Babylon 5 ended a great war and united 100 alien races in peace. Danger didn't die. It just went underground, with new heroes and new evils to carry the torch.
We need to make sure they all understand we will not be intimidated.
What is wrong with you people?
We have to protect him against himself.
It's an entire new season of Babylon 5, with all new episodes.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
The climax.
Woo, all right. So kind of a shortened climax. I said earlier in the show that we were going to talk about the history of privacy and that we were going to talk about the movie The Circle. I'm going to have to save that for, and it's a pity because it would have fit so nicely with our conversations around the importance of privacy, like with Sarah Ha and some other things, because, boy, that Circle movie, well, I'll save it. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. We'll get into that. Okay, maybe I'll do like a double, because there's another movie that I want to review for the climax next week. But maybe I'll make it a double review and we'll talk about it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, I'm calling an audible, as they would say, I think, in the sports world. I'm going to review something different, and it's something that just came out, and spoiler alerts. Of course, the climax is where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. It could be a comic book, a movie, TV show, whatever. I want to talk about, in fact, I briefly mentioned it on a Patreon episode this week. I want to talk about the new season 3 of Voltron Legendary Defender. Now, I've covered the previous 2 seasons. I've reviewed each season as they've come out, because this is, in my opinion, one of the best shows out, bar none. Not animated, just one of the best shows, bar none. And it's remarkable because this is also it's a clean show. Like there's no swearing, there's no real sex, there's not a whole ton of gore or anything like that. But for it to be so entertaining, and in my opinion, so entertaining on nearly every demographic level, is no small feat in itself. In fact, only achievable by the likes of Star Wars. And maybe some other, like Star Trek or something, or some other franchises where just anybody could sit down and watch this, and every different age group or whatever is going to get something out of it. It's just remarkable. So season 3 was a short season. It was only 7 episodes, and it just came out August 4th, I think. Season 4 is coming out the beginning of November, I believe. I think it's like November 8th that comes out. It looks like they just split a season, because season 4 is going to be short as well. Like it's going to, season 3 and season 4 are effectively going to add up to being really 13 episodes, I think. Now that's okay. Like I don't mind that, but what I think is really happening here, the reason why this season breakup is happening, is because they can't crank out. At first I thought that somehow Netflix just figured it out, how you could crank out, a season of a show like twice a year. So you could have 2 seasons per year, right? But it appears they can't. And so they're splitting things in half. And to keep what I'm going to call Netflix rot from happening, where people binge watch stuff on Netflix. Obviously, everybody knows this. But the thing is that if you binge watch something and then you have to wait a whole year or more, like Rick and Morty or something. If you have to wait a whole year for the next episode, you run into problems. I mean, this is becoming a popular thing. I think it's other channels are kind of getting in on the game, where like with Star Wars Rebels, where they will play the pilot episode like 2 months ahead of when the actual season will come out, because it's out of sight, out of mind. People forget about it, and then they'll have completely forgotten perhaps even the events that happened a year previous or something. I mean, this is a problem that binge watching is, or that is an outcropping of binge watching that I think Netflix is trying to solve by splitting the seasons, which is ironic because this is exactly what network television did, decades ago, where you would have a mid-season break. That's pretty much what Netflix is doing here. And it's fine, because even though season 3 doesn't really feel like a cohesive whole like season 1 and season 2 did, season 3 of Voltron was still phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal. It's still some of the best shit, like I said, on TV. Maybe Netflix's own Castlevania would take the cake from it as far as, like checking all my boxes that I want out of a show. But it is so cool. And there was some nice homage. And so spoiler alerts here. Not that they're heavy spoilers, but from the first season, it seemed that Princess Aurora wasn't going to end up getting a lion, but in the 80s Voltron, which I grew up on, like the 84, 87 Voltron, whatever, Princess Aurora flew Blue Lion. And so it was always like, okay, well, I mean, and when I saw the first and second season, because in second season there was no sign of her getting a lion either, I was like, all right, I mean, Princess Allura can do her own thing. She's got this badass castle that's a starship, and that's totally different from, from the original Voltron. So, yeah, okay, maybe they make that her thing. Like, that's how she gets around with the team and all that. So she doesn't even need to pilot a Lion. But a weird thing happens. So, of course, the character of Shiro, season 3 is largely dealing with the loss of Shiro and someone else having to take over, which that was another storyline from the 80s Voltron, which was you had the character of Sven, who wore the black uniform, because most of the uniforms, or some of the uniforms, would color code with the Lion. Like Pidge wears a green uniform, and so, rode Green Lion, and Hunk was a yellow uniform and would fly Yellow Lion. So all the colors used to match up, until Sven dies off and he's not really Black Lion anymore, or, however they ended up, making it work in the 80s Voltron. So Shiro in Legendary Defender, the new show, he has disappeared after season 2, and they don't know what to do about it. And Keith, who is who wears a red uniform and was previously flying Red Lion, it gets chosen to pilot Black Lion. And so now it matches up with the show where you have, where Keith in the red uniform is flying Black Lion. That's how it was in the 80s Voltron. Equally, when you were starting to get hints, because the first few episodes of the season, they're dealing with the fact that you can't form Voltron. And like a lot of these rebellious groups, against Zarkon's empire, they want to see Voltron. That's kind of their message of hope. Well, they started doing something cool. Like Princess Allura is wearing this new uniform that's pink, but it has like these blue accents in it. And I'm like, oh, they're alluding to the fact that she's going to end up piloting Blue Lion. And they do it in a great way where when she finally gets Blue Lion, because there's, originally Lance is flying Blue Lion, then he ends up with Red Lion. Again, these are the spoilers, but it's really awesome when Princess Allura finally gets it. And there's so many genuinely funny moments. And that character alone, Princess Allura, I'm really glad they're letting her take the cake as far as being like a heavily concentrated on character, because wasn't so much true in the 80s Voltron, and yet that's the one that you always wanted to know about was the gal, especially when you're a young guy. But Prince Lotor, badass, phenomenal. They're doing everything right. So a really cool season. Kind of setting up the new team and everything was a nice touch. Introducing us to Prince Lotor, very cool. So can't wait for season 4 because I've already checked out everything in season 3. But, I think this is exciting. This is definitely one of the best shows going. Easily one of the best animated shows, right behind Castlevania and, Rick and Morty. Of course, Rick and Morty is phenomenal. And boy, how about that season 3? Whew. Anyway, feel free, become a patron. Sovryn.tech.com. Get your hookup. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to Sovryn.tech.com. That's Sovryn Tech.com. And connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.